Boker Tov. So yesterday we talked about when is the correct time to dispose of Hametz this year, both on Friday and on Shabbat. The question now is how to dispose of Hametz. So let's talk about how to do it on a regular year. The Gemara gives us three ways of doing so. Either you burn it, or Zorel Ruach, you scatter it into the wind, or the third one is you break it into small pieces and cast it away into the sea. Each of these three means we're told are appropriate ways of doing so: burning, throwing it into the sea, or scattering it in the wind. Rabbi Yehuda held that you have to burn it. The halacha, the vast majority of the Rishonim, follows the opinion that all three ways are acceptable, and indeed this is how the Shulchan Aruch rules. The Rama says for the Ashkenazim that it's a good practice to burn it, and the minhag, the custom, is to burn the hametz, and indeed this is what Ashkenazim do each year. They burn the hametz, and that's the minhag of many of the Sfaradim to do so. If it's difficult for one to do so, one can do the other means of doing so, i.e., breaking it down and scattering it away, which for all intents and purposes means taking it out of your possession and breaking it down into small pieces, getting rid of it from one's possession, or throwing it in a place like into the sea, somewhere where one completely relinquishes ownership over it. So this year, we explained yesterday that one disposes of all their chametz on Friday, which all chametz they're not going to be using over the course of Friday night and Shabbat morning. One disposes at any time on Friday, although it's preferable to do so before an hour before midday. And so on Friday, you have the regular options, whatever you do each year. Either you burn it on Friday before 11:54, or any time on Friday for that matter, or the other means of doing so, you take it out of your possessions, etc. The question arises with regards to hametz left over on Friday night and on Shabbat. So you set aside food, hametz, some chalot, some bread, some pizza, whatever it may be, for the meals of Shabbat. We're going to talk about the meals later on. And you set it aside, and then for whatever reason you have leftover. Someone wasn't feeling well, didn't want to eat it, etc. You have leftover hametz in one's possessions. What does one do? So if you live in a place with an eruv, so you could take it out of your possession and break it up and scatter it in the wind, break it into small pieces, and that's fine. You can leave it out on the street, pieces of bread, etc. As long as they're small pieces, less than a kazait, one can do that. However, if one lives in a place without an eruv, so one cannot take it out of their possession, one cannot burn on Shabbat. So one is limited in what the options they have, and really one only has one of two options if one has leftover hametz on Shabbat, and that is, however, this may sound, one may not be like this, but this is the only option one has. One of two options: either one flushes it down the toilet, that is the equivalent of throwing it into the sea, and one shouldn't wrap it up and throw it down the toilet, because although one might be thinking that this is disrespectful for the bread, but the whole point is that it needs to break down, and so actually one should just flush it down, or one puts it in their black bin outside, but that's not sufficient because that's still in their kind of possession, and so one would need to make it no longer ra'uy la'achilat kelev, no longer fitting for consumption of an animal. And so one would do that by pouring onto it chemicals, onto bleach, detergent, whatever it may be, thus rendering it no longer fit for consumption of a human or of an animal. And so those are the options. Of course, one should try their best to dispose of all their chametz on Friday in the conventional ways, and set aside only what's necessarily required for Friday night and Shabbat morning. Whatever, however, is left over, these are the options one has for Friday night and Shabbat day. A couple of other points just to be aware that on Thursday night, of course, we do Bedikat Hametz. And after Bedikat Hametz, we say Kad Hamira de Kabil Shoti. Any Hametz in my possession which I haven't seen shall be nullified. And then normally in the next morning, we say any Hametz in my possession which I've seen or haven't seen shall be nullified. We don't say that any time on Friday, because anything which you didn't know about, you nullified on Thursday night after Bedikat Hametz, and anything which you have intentionally left it for Friday night and Shabbat morning. And so that's what happens this year is we say the first Kal Hamira on Thursday night after Bedikat Hametz, and the second one on Shabbat morning when one finishes all their chametz, then one says, any chametz in my possession which I've seen or haven't seen shall be nullified like the dust of that.